So for exit slip number 8, we're looking for students will be able to identify evidence, that's the key word, that supports an inference drawn from the text. Now, if you remember, Kente, an inference is just coming up with your own idea about what you're reading, and you always have to support your idea using evidence. It's just things that are written inside the text that support your idea. So let's look at this. Let's look at our directions for exit slip number 6. The directions are to read page 24 through 26 of March, book 1, and identify the evidence that supports the inference. So question 1 is, what line best supports the idea that John was superstitious, believe in something not based in fact? Okay, so our inference is John was superstitious. And I'm going to think of some other words as well that I can think of that have to do with being superstitious. Believe in something not based in fact. Superstitious. Well, I know stuff that's not based in fact might be magic, maybe luck. Those are a couple things I can think of that kind of that come to mind when I think of superstitious. So John kind of believes in luck or like magic. So I'm looking at my evidence, or I'm looking at my options. I'm going to look through them and do process of elimination. Springtime was my favorite time of the year because it was the only season we could get baby chicks. Well, that doesn't really talk about him being superstitious or lucky or believing in luck, so I'm gonna say that that's not our option. B. The numbers were always odd, never even. I had been told never to put an even number under a setting hin. It was bad luck. I'm seeing this term right here, bad luck, and I'm going to, boom, highlight it. Oh no, not what I wanted to do. Let's see if I can actually, you're right in the way here thing, aren't you? Well, I know it's bad luck, so I'm going to think it might be B. C. I'd take a few from the hens that were setting on a large number of eggs and slip them under the hens that weren't. Again, I don't see anything about John saying that he was superstitious or anything about lucky here. D. So by slipping more eggs under the hens, I was able to keep them setting another 3 weeks. That seems more like a clever idea than luck. So I'm actually going to go with my answer is B. The numbers were always odd, never even. I'd been told never to put an even number under a setting hen. It was bad luck. Why is my answer D? What's my explanation? Well, I might put something like I chose answer B because John talks about how odd numbers are bad luck, which seems superstitious. Let's look at question 2. Which line best supports the idea that John had a future plan to care for baby chicks? So again, I just have to look. I have to look and I have to find the inference. Well, I'm seeing, remember what we talked about before, that an inference is an idea. So we're looking for that evidence supports the idea that, my inference, John had a future plan to care for baby chicks. So I'm going to actually, that's my inference. So my inference is John had a future plan to care for baby chicks. Well, again, I'm going to annotate. I'm going to think to myself, what does it mean to have a future plan? Maybe it involves thinking about the future. Maybe finding tools to help you maybe what feelings that might go along with thinking about the future. You might hope, you might be concerned. These are all things that we can think about for John showing that he had a future plan. I might even bold this, a future plan. Which one of these shows that he has a future plan? I'm going to let you try to find that one out. So for exit ticket 9, students will be able to identify what a particular line from the text reveals, and reveals just means shows, about what the character expects. But what the character expects to happen. Expects just means what they think is going to happen. So, let's try question 1 together. Question 1. Read this sentence from page 54 of March. I thought that, come fall, I'd be riding a state-of-the-art bus to a state-of-the-art school. This line suggests that John is expecting, well, I'm seeing this state-of-the-art bus to a state-of-the-art school. Know that state-of-the-art means something that's really fancy, something that's really nice. So my evidence, I'm just going to pull, is the line that's in quotations. I'm going to bold that. I'm going to change that color to red. Boop. So my evidence is I thought that come fall, I'd be riding a state-of-the-art bus to a state-of-the-art school. Now, what does this show us about what John is expecting? Well, I remember from the story that John was driving by a school every day, a white school with a state-of-the-art playground. So it makes me remember that in integration, that come the fall, John is expecting. Well, I'm thinking he's expecting that he's going to go to a nicer school now, that he's going to be in an integrated school. So that's something that I might consider. So I might say something like John is expecting to go to an integrated school. Let's try this number 2. So we're going to read this sentence from March. But my parents' attitude didn't bother me nearly as much as those amongst the ministers at the church, who never mentioned these injustices in their sermons. So, what does this line reveal about what John expects from the ministers? Well, I'm going to highlight the part where he talks about the ministers. And that's going to be my evidence, right? Because it's talking about the ministers. I'm trying to make an inference about what John is expecting from them. The ministers at the church, who never mentioned these injustices at their sermon. So I'm seeing from my evidence, my parents' attitude didn't bother me as much as those amongst the ministers. So we know John is bothered by the minister's attitude. So that's kind of telling me that John is expecting the ministers to do something different than what they're doing right now. Well, what are the ministers doing right now? They're not mentioning injustices. Well, what's an injustice? An injustice at the top says not having fairness or justice. So the ministers are not mentioning the fact that he and black people around him are not having justice. So what is John expecting them to do? If they're not talking about the injustice that their black brothers and sisters are having, what is John expecting them to do? Let's look at objective number 10's exit slip. Students will be able to identify how particular, again, lines from the text reveal the emotions or the relationship, let's go relationship, between John Lewis and others working for the civil rights. So we're going to read this sentence from March. And outpoured the emotions. What does the phrase outpoured the emotions reveal about the relationship between John and the congregation, or people listening to him preach? So I know my evidence, again, is outpoured the emotions, because that is the part that we're talking about, the piece of evidence that we're trying to find some kind of inference from or some kind of idea from. So I'm going to copy that, outpour the emotion. What is the relationship? So John is speaking in front of a sermon or a group of people at a church and outpoured the emotions. I remember that he was nervous at first, but then the emotion poured out. I have to think to myself, well, what type of people do you pour emotions out to? Do you pour emotions out to strangers, or do you pour emotions out to other people, people that are closer to you? So if he's pouring this emotions out to the congregation, how do we think John feels about the congregation or the people he's talking to? Does he feel close to them, or does he feel far away from them? What are people that you're close to, that you can talk to emotions about? Can we compare them to the congregation?